All right. Hey, welcome back to the Go for CEO channel. This is John the Bomb. Building others means business. And I've got a special guest, Butch Zemar from Elite Benefits of America. This guy is revolutionizing the benefits space. He's doing some really cool things. And recently he's been doing some acquisitions. So stay tuned to this channel or to this episode. And we're going to have a lot of good times with Butch. He's going to share his 20 something year story here. So, by the way, subscribe to the channel and, keep growing this Go for CEO community, ladies and gentlemen. So, Butch Zemar, welcome to the Go for CEO channel. How are you?
I'm good, John. Thanks for inviting me on. I know we've been trying to do this for a little while, so I appreciate taking the opportunity to get squeeze me in.
Yeah, no, we met through networking events and Chicagoland area, and obviously I've seen you work your magic and the things that you do, and on LinkedIn and some of the great posts you do and the information that you're sharing. So excited for the story. So, but hey, man, 20 something years, it's a long ride with a business. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
it's been a wild ride. We'll say that.
Yeah. So yeah, tell us, the beginning parts of our interviews are typically the ideation, where you came up with it. Were you in the industry before? Did you go cold turkey and just start it from a different industry? What's the word with Elite Benefits of America?
There's a lot of words with elite benefits, right? And so I was in the military. I was in the Navy. Worked in aviation maintenance, so air conditioned shop, not the squadron, but and then I got out and I worked in the scuba world for a couple years full time, and wasn't making enough money, and so stumbled around a little bit and fell into the health insurance world. I don't know too many people that raise their hand and say I want to sell health insurance or insurance in general. I mean, health insurance is a niche in itself. So I started my career going into small businesses, dismantling small groups and providing individual health insurance and setting up HRAs, or what they call health reimbursement arrangements. And so they were saving a ton of people money. I feel like myself and a lot of mentors and people I collaborated with in the industry, we solved the mystery of underwriting and pre-existing conditions. Pre-existing conditions was not an issue. It's most people just didn't understand it. And obviously, the Affordable Care Act came in, the model changed. We got into the group business. Um, I eventually sold, moved into a larger agency, found out that entrepreneurship and corporate environments don't collide well, and so they gave me the blessing of going back onto my own, and we've been growing ever since. We've done multiple acquisitions to help, but they're all small baseball stuff. I can't complain. It's revenue to us, and we're helping us grow. And unlike the big shops that are capturing some middle-sized markets, I would love to grab one of those, but it's not there. But during that time, we've had to redefine ourselves, not only from an industry perspective, but like just from a persona, right? Like, a lot of times, in it, I don't know where I left off,
Yeah.
but
So you were just sharing the story of kind of where you were and how you were
yep,
growing and and giving us some insights of how you started to develop, right? The
yep,
acquisitions have been part of it, but I guess
yeah,
here's the thing. Why don't we also share like, hey, obviously, first of all, thank you for serving in our U.S.
mm,
naval military. That's such a big honor and one of those things that me personally, as an only child, I missed that opportunity, but it's such a great background, right? And then you weren't that happy with what you came out doing as far as your day to day, but then you got into employee benefits. You learned this insurance business, and then you get acquired, and then you're part of that corporate atmosphere. But now you go back to your own. So that's where you kind of left off there, is just giving us
yep.
that sense of going back on your own and what were some of the things that you were doing.
Yeah, so then we go back on my own, and then we had to redefine us as a person or agency. And I started off small. It was just me and a part-time assistant, and we're almost 10 employees now, and so we're moving in the right direction. But we had to come up with a way, and we're still redefining it as we move along, because there's a lot of insurance brokers out there. So how do we make ourselves different, right? And that's really what it comes down to. And so we sell all the same products, and most of the commissions are about the same. So it's not like we're not really necessarily commodity, because it's the intellectual knowledge and getting A to B. And so how we get there is definitely the path, right? And so there's old school methodology that's in our industry. we're an old school industry and it keeps operating that way.
Yeah, I mean, look, it'll be around forever. It's something that's the evil necessary, right? You need auto insurance, you need building and home insurance, you need health insurance because ultimately, not many people are prepared to self-insure themselves, right? With a couple $100,000 that could unfortunately happen with some sort of disease or anything like that. But I've always been interested in just kind of so you start the agency. Tell us like what's the startup cost nowadays, or like how do you get into that? Because ultimately, from what I know, it's getting a license and then getting appointments with certain carriers. Because you're not necessarily doing the insurance, but you're brokering it through it, right? Is that kind of the concept of it?
Yeah, kind of. And so there's a misconception a lot of we're divided industries. So we have the commercial and property and casualty, which we don't do internally here. We just do the benefits, the health insurance, anything related around health insurance. So it's a different atmosphere. So on the commercial side, you definitely have to do a lot of things you had said. On our side, I feel like you pass a test, you get a license, anybody's going to give you an appointment paperwork. Just so you could be somebody that watches TV all day and still sell health insurance, and we don't have binding authority, so there's less risk for us, and so it's a downside. Because now, especially with the Affordable Care Act and mandates and requirements by the employers, a lot of that gets overlooked because it's not our responsibility as the employer. But as a consultant in the industry, we got to make sure our clients are aware of these things and make sure they tackle them, and that's where some of the defining role comes in. And so for startup costs, very minimum. There's still people doing it for 40 years out of their basement, and that's okay. I call it an ecosystem, and so they're part of the ecosystem. They're there to serve a certain type of clientele that's okay with that, and that's fine. And we're growing, and we're not a 100 employee shop, and so if people are looking for that, I guess we're not the pick. But it's about solutions, right? And so how we're going to get to the result, and some of them are challenging to get there, but that's why we usually look at it as a multi-year outlook, right? So things take time, and sometimes you're not in a good spot for it, and you have to start working on it. But you got to have a plan, you got to have a playbook, and that's what we built internally was to work with our clients with a playbook, and so they have a direction to go.
So, I really enjoy always sharing the quadrants that there are, right? So, you were stuck in a little short period of time as an employee of that bigger firm that had acquired you
Hmm.
guys, and then you went back to self-employed, right? And now you've built a business, so it's the EBI,
Hmm.
is it self-employed,
Yep.
ESBI,
Yes.
the cash flow quadrants. But, as a business owner, take us back. I mean, I guess, you start out, you're talking to businesses, what are some of the ways that you created either lead lists, or what were you doing to market yourself at the beginning? And obviously it's evolved throughout the years. You got great clients. I'm sure you get referrals, all that good stuff. But tell us a little bit of that insight of those beginning parts, because I think that's the journey we want to kind of go through with you, and then we'll end up at the end as well.
So lead generation has always really been through handshakes, personal connections. That's the reality. Cold calling doesn't really work. It's a lot of work. I always say when a new guy comes in our industry, pick up the phone and start dialing because that's all you got time for. And so, but when you get busy, like you have to define what you're trying to do, and we're not perfect any either, but then you gravitate towards who's giving you the most referrals, but not from a persona like, hey, this guy's taking care of me kind of thing, but more like an industry or vertical that could help you. And so, because if I know 20 CPAs in the Chicagoland area and one of them give a referral each year, I just got 20 pieces of business that I didn't have to go peddle. I just had to take care of them. And um, so that's the avenue we really have gone down, and it's worked, right? Does it work all the time? Absolutely not. And so, sometimes you do have to be a little bit creative, right? You have to dig deeper. LinkedIn's helped out a ton. Um, I can only imagine, some of the mentors I started with, they talk about stories of bringing quarters out in the morning and hitting payphones, and just a different like they would like love this type of industry because they got the worth ethic and things are at their disposal that never been before. And then you get newer guys coming in the industry and they just take it for granted because they've never been there. And so, even just from peddling doors, right? And this is just as I do. You go visit a client or a prospect, there's 5 doors right next door. And so
Yeah.
go knock on the door, say hi, like, and you're not trying to sell a thing. The same thing with the networking events. I don't go in selling anything, right? I'm a friend. I tell them about the scuba industry. I got 4 boys that play hockey. That's that. I mean, I think it probably a longer sales cycle, but people get to know who you are, and it's a little bit different atmosphere at that point. Insurance sales guys are like snake oil sales guys in a lot of ways. They're looking for that next, how do I get this business as fast as possible? I just want to be the guy you call, like the second guy. Just call me. Keep your guy. He's probably good. We can look at it, but he's probably doing a good job. But just call me second. That's all I ask because one day it'll probably work.
That mindset is it's a great one, right? I mean, you feel like, hey, the bridesmaid will get the business, right?
Hmm.
Eventually, because you're going to stay there, you're going to be consistent, you're going to share value. And I see the post that you do on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you have some sort of email or maybe a newsletter system, and just dripping on them is consistency about building that credibility with what you do, or seeing you at multiple networking events can be endearing, right? And say, "Oh, Butch is here again. Hey, man, how you been?" Da, 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 talking about your kids and hockey, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden I click and I'm like, "Oh, wait, let me introduce, Butch," or maybe I'm looking for that situation and what have you. So, I love that stuff. I think there's a lot of organic ways of doing that, but I will say this. So I'll be a devil's advocate. We all have to make money, right? So
Yes, we do.
the slow approach can sometimes be death by a thousand
Daunting.
cuts.
Yes.
so
Yes,
I
but I
go ahead.
have a rebuttal to that though.
Okay,
So
I love
yeah,
it. Let's
so
teach that. Let's teach the
yeah, yeah.
community.
So you're 100% correct. But in every business that I could see, and of course I'm not a sales expert, I know in our industry you can make transactions in the same week. You literally can. And sometimes it takes a lot more effort, but you could figure it out. And once you figure it out, then it's a pattern, right? And so it's creating a habit of cycles, right? And so not everybody's going to buy today, and that's okay, right? But you'll be in business in 3 weeks. Well, you build the pipeline big enough in 3 weeks, or 3 months, or 3 years, and eventually everything works out. And so it's definitely about pedaling and finding opportunities. A lot in our world, we have renewal dates, so you could check renewal dates. And for larger groups, you could actually find those renewal dates online, and there's a database for it. And so sometimes, well, we pay a subscription for it. We could find out. It may not be 100% accurate, but it'd be pretty close. It's enough information to try to make a discussion out of something. And so you could certainly be in the door at some point and try to make some transactions soon enough. But you're right, organically.
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying organic.
Yeah, so organically, you can definitely, build a pipeline so you have sales on a consistent basis over time. But there's definitely ways you could put in sales every week or every month for that matter. In our industry, in the group market, it's usually monthly. It's not always weekly. It's timing, but I call it small ball baseball. There's business out there all day long. We've had small ball baseball anywhere from one or two a month to as much as 20 in a month, because you got to keep pedaling.
Yeah, look, I mean, business is interesting. And I think I love the game of it, and that's why it entertains, it fulfills, it brings you, for those of us that want to be in the sales and growth industry, right? Of any industry, right? You're always looking for opportunities. You're trying to measure how do you build those relationships so that there's that know, like, and trust factor, right? And then you're creating that opportunity by planting seeds of like, hey, here's what I do, here's what I do, here's what I do. So, in my day to day of commercial banking, I always feel like, that bridesmaid effort is fulfilled, but it does take a little bit of traction. And like you said, once you have a pipeline, I think the mystery of it all is that's called momentum, right? You start building mo. What you don't want to do is stop what you originally did. So continue to do those activities so that mo never stops, right, in the future. So I love that. So, hey, earlier you mentioned we're kind of a one man shop with an assistant and growing yourself there, and now you've grown into 10 employees, right? What was that transition like for you? I think a lot of times when you go from self employed of owning your own job per se to a business owner, there is a different mind shift, right? And you're leading people now, you're organizing things, you're having standard operating procedures. Can you walk us through a little bit of what you've done to be able to kind of help you get through that phase?
Well, I've had a lot of help, and a lot of lunches, picking, minds, even such as guys like you, John. Like, I'm sure you and I could go out to lunch and you could share some new information I didn't know. So you learn along the way. Some of it was the military, especially with standard operating procedures. Um, you know, the culture we bring to the table here is, do your job, right? And so, like, not in a negative way, like, empower them, right? I'm not micromanaging them. Hey, and then if you got a new idea, bring it to the table. I tell you, we've adjusted for some of our employees because it makes sense, and I want to make it easier for people, right? I don't want to be the roadblock because I need it my way. So being flexible along the way is definitely paid dividends, but you also have to have boundaries. Nothing, it's like kind of like raising kids, right? You want to have a little freedom, but you want to have the little closure and a structure to make sure that they don't get out of hand. But at the same time, have the structure, right? So everybody gets their kids up in the morning and goes to school, and feed them, and and get them to bed on time. And it's a little somewhat the same, but it's been an interesting battle. And some days it's kind of like I could see why some companies stay small, and other ways where it gives you motivation to keep going. And that's where I'm at, where, I just want to keep growing, just because, the small business problems, are nuances, and I need to grow and get bigger ones. But it's just climbing that ladder, right? You just got to keep your footing on the ladder, keep your hand on the ladder, and just keep moving up.
So when you take on someone new, right, from a scaling perspective of talent, is there a time frame that you expect? Like, hey, I'm going to interview this person 3 times. They're going to also interview with some people inside my organization. Or have you taken the approach like, hey, if it's a good referral, and I found them on LinkedIn and they have a nice resume, yeah, I may give them that extra oomph to join the organization and get them going faster? What are some of the criterias that you look for?
We've been lucky. Most of ours have been come through some type of contact, right? So there's been some type of reference already built in. There's been already a connection in some degree, and that's helped, right? When we went through interview process, they did interview with multiple team members, and um, there's got to be certain things that stand out. I love non employee related questions myself, like sports, or hobbies. Anyway, there is a line where we can't cross from an HR perspective, but like, we hired one guy and he played college soccer. So we had a small conversation about what college soccer was like, but it helped me build a little picture, and we ended up hiring him. And he moved into a different role naturally, but that's fine. He helped us during the time frame that he was willing to work for us. And I do think his soccer days definitely paid off for us.
Yeah, I mean, athletes have those 4 C's, right? Character, confidence, charisma, and work ethic. So I guess it's 3 C's. So,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
I really relate to that, and being a soccer player myself, and you look for those types of genuine attributes, right? That, hey, did they do some things earlier in their life that created some mechanisms of leadership, of accountability, of things that they can, flourish in this new opportunity as they get older, right? So really cool stuff. So yeah, look, we've talked about, how you started, organically marketing yourself and going through the phases and kind of take the long approach, right, of building relationships. And that's worked out to build a nice momentum and pipeline for you at the moment, right? We've talked about scaling and looking at talent of how to go through this. So what about operations, right? You're looking at, I guess simplistically speaking, you are pointed to certain industry insurance companies. You're evaluating things for these clients, but is there a way that you onboard someone on the first intake, or are you taking approaches in different ways compared to your competition?
We didn't reinvent the wheel, that's for sure.
Okay.
There's a lot of things you pick up along the way, and we're still improving, right? And so there's that. We created a playbook to help walk our clients through, and not all of them go through the whole entire playbook because they're not ready. There's some other dynamics that are into play. There's a number of reasons, but from an onboarding perspective, we start off with, the biggest thing is price, right? We talk about cost containment, and cost containment is a big issue. Some can't do the cost containment like they can, or there's tools in the industry. They're just not there yet. It can be heavy claims. There's a number of reasons, right? But cost containment is it. And the industry has a huge status quo, and so it's moving away from the status quo. That's the big thing. If you could redesign your an employee benefit program any way you wanted, what would it look like, right? And so that's the biggest question, right? But most people end up going back to, I always call it the big purple logo, right? And so they always go to one and or two, right? And so, but it doesn't give you enough levers. And so when you operate a ship, right, you have to have levers, right? You got to know maneuvers, and you can't do that with certain products in the marketplace. And the problem is the industry is driven off of that. I always say you go back in time to the 70s even. Our industry taught employers how to buy health insurance for their employees. And so we taught them how to do it, and now we have to unwind it because it was the wrong way of doing business. And but the problem is the industry is stuck on it. So we have to re-educate the whole entire market, but not us. The whole industry is moving. People are saying, I need to save money. And so sometimes you have to look at them and say, you want to save money, but you want to keep doing the same thing. Check, got it. So sometimes it's just reteaching them, and that takes time. So we have clients that are with us that didn't do anything different when they came on board, but we have a multi-year plan, and then we keep working the plan every year to try and move closer. And sometimes it might take them 10 years, it could be 18 months, and we're already on the right path, right? And we have some larger accounts, especially that definitely have turned the needle on healthcare, and then gave employees empowered them to actually make better choices when it comes to them for better outcomes. And so there's definitely a lot of solutions there.
Nate. Well, look, there's a lot of complexity to business, right? But that's what makes it fun in various times of your life. And
Hmm.
you mentioned you're a little personal, right? You mentioned kids, so you've got kids in hockey. I'm sure, obviously, you're involved in all those types of things. What's that flexibility like? Since you picked an industry that has some flexibility, you're not going into like a office every day, or going into a manufacturing business. What is that giving you as far as freedom and flexibility, along with still being able to operate a business?
I don't know if there's much flexibility in it. It's more of what demand takes precedence first, right? And so yeah, so it's been challenging, right? And so just like most parents, I would never judge a family if they only have one child or if they have 10, because they all have their own thing, right? It carries its own set of challenges, right? So you have to adapt, and so sometimes I have to adjust my work schedule in order to meet those demands, but then everything bleeds together in a lot of cases, unfortunately, right? And so, and as a professional development thing, every week, every month, I try to draw a line in the sand and try to make it better. And when you look over the last 5 years, I am far better. But when you look from week to week, it looks like I'm failing. But just like most things in business, right? If you keep progressing, eventually over time, you'll see the difference, but you won't see it all the time.
Well, Go for CEO community, you just heard some authentic feedback of being
Yeah.
a business owner. Those last 20 seconds, I know, is going to be a clip for a short for there. I love that. I
Hmm.
love it. And it's so true, right? Yesterday, I played Uber for most of my kids, getting them to tennis practice. I got a call for a deal that I was doing. I was driving one to the volleyball, and then I picked one up at Tumblr, and then my wife had to pick another one. Then I went to a networking event in Chicago from 5 to 8, and then I talked to another guy.
Yeah,
It was a crazy day. So I
sure.
get it, man. I really appreciate that lifestyle. But that what I meant by flexibility is you chose an industry that is pretty cool, like in that sense, right? I always remind my spouse that I'm not going to a factory to work on a machine, which God bless those people, and it's so cool that we
Yeah.
have them, right? But we got lucky in commercial banking and YouTube and health insurance and all these spaces that have this flexibility that really have afforded people to have families and doing some interesting stuff. So look, we end our
Yeah.
podcast typically with the CEO model, right? So client experience, engagement, and that could be with your insurance company that you deal with, that you're appointed at, or the new employees that you're coming around with, the leadership, the team that you have, the mentors, and then operational excellence, which you touched on as well, and we'll go through some of those things. But from a value proposition for what you guys do and what you do at your business, what is the client experience if you drum it up in like 30 to 60 seconds?
The goal is to walk our clients through the playbook, right? So from, we go walk them through our playbook. It's talks about streamlining processes, technology, cost containment measures, even compliance, and then how do you engage your employees, and right? So that's our unique proposition. We focus on a lot of things to build better outcomes. A lot of companies um, end up just winging it. Are you still there?
Yeah.
I thought maybe I lost you again. And so a lot of companies and a lot of brokerages, they wing it per client. We're trying to keep things consistent so that way we could diagnose things. If something's not working the way we plan, we could go back to the playbook and see where we're at and see what we miss, just like any sport out there or any process that's been made. And we fine tune it over time to keep improving it.
I love it. I love it. All right. So engagement, right? I see you
Mhm.
obviously at networking events. I'm assuming there's certain things you do with your team, and even building those relationships with the carriers that you represent. What are
Mhm.
some things that you do to engage that make it different to deal with Butch?
On a client perspective, we built on a timeline that's actually automated internally, but not necessarily externally. And so it's a constant engagement with our clients, not necessarily by an old school newsletter. So we're talking about we take on a new client. Let's say there's an open enrollment. Then we have a post renewal meeting. Sometimes we don't have them because the employer's like, hey, we're good. We don't need this, but we engage them anyway. A lot of our clients take the meeting. We talk about pros and cons of what happened in open enrollment, any feedback from the employees. And then we have a mid-year review, and we walk them through that process along with the pre-renewal meeting, the renewal meeting, and then we go to open enrollment and then starts all over again. And so it's just constant engagement to make sure that we're right on path. We talk through a playbook. It may not be labeled as a playbook. It depends on where they're at in there, but there's a process. We're trying to control their costs is the biggest pain they have. And so how do we do that without jeopardizing coverage for the employees? And that's why we engage them throughout the year to try to keep on path. From internally, we have obviously just like in most companies, we have our internal meetings. We try to have ongoing training. We try to work with things and make the process better. We honor feedback from our employees. Tell us, right? Like empower them to make changes. And sometimes we say no, and sometimes we say yes. And so it's about just that collaboration.
I love it. All right. Well, hey, it's really, evident that you take time to build relationships from your marketing side and business development to internal to with your clients. It's very,
Yeah.
present that you're doing that intentionally. So really
Mm.
cool to hear on the engagement side. Last one is operational excellence, right? Softwares. Is there new things that are going on with AI in your industry? Are you implementing anything new, or is there just consistency with what you've been able to do in the processes? Can you share with us the operational side of what you do that you feel is excellent?
We're excellent across the board, right? Obviously, there's always room and improvements, and we try to leverage the technology. Just in the last couple of years, we have shifted probably too many times to adapt the technology to make it better for us. Sometimes we get into something and it didn't work out as planned, so we move to something that's going to be better. I think we're on a home stretch now, but AI is definitely a piece, but we mainly use it for the marketing end. And so I do know. We started to dabble with proposals with it. We have not perfected a process through it or made it a habit yet. I know other industries have where they're able to create a whole like a big booklet for a proposal out of AI using the tools and resources that they have. So those are some things we're not there quite there yet, but and then the only other technology is moving employers to electronic database kind of thing for electronic enrollments and keeping track of employee management through a platform.
All right. Well, hey, Go for CO community. This is exactly the type of person that we love having on the Go for CO channel.
Hmm.
A gentleman that served the Navy in the Navy and gets out, works for himself, and then all of a sudden gets kind of wrapped into corporate, and then decides, hey, that's not for me. I'm going to go back on my own. And now he's a
Mhm.
10-person employee business, really doing something in America that's changing, companies' lives, that are individuals inside the companies and doing some big things and building relationships, day by day, and slowly but surely, that will come with momentum to build the
Mhm.
pipeline. So, any other inspiring words or asks that you would share, and obviously tell us where to get a hold of you, how to interact with you guys, and how to bring you business if someone's interested watching this channel.
From our client perspective or prospects, I always say just get the second opinion. The status quo isn't working. You need to get second opinion. But in our industry, if any brokers or insurance agents are listening to this, we're open arms over here. If you need something, just give us a call. Businesses need to strive, right? So you need to persevere. We just need to have resources like John's putting together with all the CEOs and keeping those businesses in the right direction. So, obviously, I'm Butch Zemar from Elite Benefits of America. You could reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's probably the most common place. EliteBenefits.net is another source of information as well. Those are probably the best sources that get in touch with us. I appreciate this, John. It's been fun.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Well, and we got to thank your parents, man. Butch is not a common name, right? So it's easy to look up on LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
So I love it. I love it. And
Yeah.
unlike mine, it's John. There's like a million Johns. I'm like, all right, no, John P. Andrade, right? So stuff like that. So I love it. I love it. So it's something unique too, right? I really cool. And obviously the naval background, the kids in hockey. You built a cool life, man. So let's keep on rolling. So, and Go for CEO community, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. Butch has his own podcast. Plug the podcast too. What's the name of the podcast?
It's Zemar podcast, and we're gonna have John on there. We're gonna go through a lot of the questions and talk about him and his background. I want to talk about the soccer days, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Oh yeah, the book's coming out soon. The 4A Formula: Untangle Any Challenge and Think Like a CEO. Thanks so much for coming on, Butch.
Thank you.